I surprised my parents with a $425,000 seaside mansion for their 50th anniversary. When I arrived, my mom was in tears and my dad shaking. My sister's family had taken over. Her husband marched toward my father, pointed at the door, and shouted, "This is my house. Get out." My sister cackled until I stepped inside, and the entire room went silent. Can you imagine pouring your entire soul, every hard-earned penny, into creating a dream for the people who gave you everything, only to walk in and find your own family, the very people you've sacrificed for your whole life, trying to steal it from under your nose? What do you do when the people who share your blood turn into strangers, and the home you bought becomes a war zone? My name's Thomas, I'm 37, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the fixer. The eldest, the one who always stepped up. I'm a neurosurgeon, which probably tells you a lot about my life. I track my days in 4 a.m. pages and operating schedules. My home is half a locker at the hospital, half a suitcase somewhere. I don't drink much, I run when I can. Every single dollar I've ever made, I've saved. You see, I grew up on the taste of fear, the cold dread of overdraft fees, and the constant whisper of "we'll see next month." I was the 10-year-old kid translating grown-up panic, telling my crying mom, "It'll be fine," even when I knew it wouldn't. I learned the shape of emergencies. I learned to be useful. 2 weeks ago, my incredible parents celebrated 50 years of marriage. 50 years of scraped by moments and silent sacrifices. I wanted to give them a real win. A place where the air smelled of salt, not stale memories. A place where the floors didn't squeak with ghosts of overdue bills, and nothing, absolutely nothing, reminded them of coupons or secondhand furniture. I found it. A small, blue house perched above the water. A little crooked, sure, but warm. A white deck, 2 swaying palms, and windows that sang when the wind swept in from the bay. It cost me $425,000. I closed on it in their names. Set up the utilities. Stocked the fridge with all their favorites. I even tucked a little note in the silverware drawer, something about late mornings and loud laughter, because that's what I envisioned for them. Love, tea. I kept it a secret from everyone, even my sister. The day arrived. I drove down with a cake and a bottle of sparkling cider. The ocean was unbelievably clear, the sky that annoying kind of perfect, and I felt stupidly, naively happy. I pulled into the driveway, and my heart just froze. Another SUV was already there. An unfamiliar one. No, this wasn't right. The front door stood wide open, the screen banging a frantic rhythm in the wind. I stepped inside. My mother was in the kitchen, clutching a dish towel like a white flag of surrender, her eyes puffy and red. My father sat hunched in a chair, hands shaking, a silent testament to distress. Boxes were everywhere. And from the hallway, loud voices, a child's cartoon blaring from a TV I hadn't even unpacked yet. "Mom." I barely managed to get the word out. That's when he appeared. Kyle, my brother-in-law. Bare feet, beer in hand, a football shirt stretched across his chest. He planted himself right in front of my father, jabbed a finger toward the open door, and yelled, "This is my house. Get out." From the couch, my sister Julia just laughed, a casual, dismissive sound that curdled my blood. "Relax, Dad," she chirped. "We're just getting settled." The plastic cake lid I was holding dug into my palm. Something inside me went very, very quiet. It was the kind of quiet that precedes a storm. I need to explain the backstory before that beautiful, new room turned into an absolute battlefield. Julia is 2 years younger. Growing up, she was the artist, then the free spirit. Then it was always just a rough patch. My parents, God bless them, they did what they knew. They sacrificed. They defended. They minimized. And me? I did what I knew. I covered. First, it was textbooks. Then a semester of tuition. Then a down payment on her first apartment. Just until Kyle's startup lands. When that startup finally landed, it landed squarely on my wallet. I paid for braces for her oldest when their dental plan had some weird deductible. I financed a used minivan when the bank laughed them out the door. I co-signed a lease after an eviction. My Venmo notes are practically a diary of their financial woes. Julia, electric bill. Kyle, job, interview suit. School trip for Mia. Rent again, just this one last time. Every single transfer felt like control, like I could somehow sand down our family's big, ugly, jagged edges. I was so wrong. My parents helped too, in smaller, more bleeding ways. Mom would pack groceries into Julia's trunk and call it cleaning out the pantry. Dad would let Kyle use his tools and practice on repairs that always ended up costing more for me to fix later. The chorus never changed. You know your sister. Not everyone's like you, Thomas. You were born old. I sent money on broken Wi-Fi at 2 a.m. from my residency call room, sleeping on a lumpy mattress because their landlord was threatening to change the locks by morning. Somewhere along the line, I became a card they swiped without ever thinking about the balance. When I found the Seaside place, I planned it like a complex surgery. I put the deed in a trust, with my parents, Sam and Ruth, as lifetime beneficiaries. I paid the taxes out 20 years in advance from a dedicated account. Prepaid the HOA fees. Replaced every lock. Holding those new keys in my hand felt like I was holding a life raft. I told mom and dad a week before their anniversary, so they could have their private tears away from a flood of attention. We drove down together. Dad touched the banister like it was a long-lost violin. Mom opened each cabinet, exhaling slowly, as if releasing years of unspoken worry. We sat on the deck, listening to the gulls cry overhead. "It's yours," I told them. Dad tried to speak, but his voice broke. Mom just said, "It smells like lemon and open windows." I stayed overnight on a blow-up mattress to test the plumbing. Everything worked. The next morning, I returned to the city to perform a decompression on a little boy with a tumor the size of a plum. The house stayed with them. Here's where the system did what systems do. Julia called Mom on day 2. "Are you at a beach?" "Whose house?" Mom, a terrible liar, stammered. "Oh, we're visiting a friend." By dinner, Julia had triangulated the address from a blurry sunset photo Dad innocently posted on Facebook. "View from our porch," it read. She arrived with Kyle, 2 kids, a dog, and the kind of aggressive entitlement you could smell from the driveway. Mom told me later, her voice small on the phone, "They just wanted to see it. They're staying for the weekend. Is that okay?" I said, "It isn't a rental, Mom." She said, "We'll talk when you come down." By Saturday morning, Dad was texting me. Some confusion about the house. "Julia keeps saying, family home. Can you come?" Then, nothing. Then a call I couldn't pick up because I was scrubbed in for surgery. And then, the selfie from Julia in my parents' kitchen, captioned, "Home sweet home." Hashtag manifesting. Comments rolled in from her friends. "So deserved." Beach era. One from Kyle. "Finally, a place where the kids can be kids." My palm started to itch, right? Where the scalpel handle rests for hours. On my way to the hospital after discharge, I sent Dad a text. "Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Love you." I drove straight from surgery, rehearsing soothing words. "We will reset this. We will breathe. We will set rules." Instead, I walked into that open door. Kyle's voice was already at a fever pitch. "You too are old. Stairs are dangerous. You'll fall. This is a family house. We're family. We'll manage it." Mom tried to interject. "It's Thomas's gift," and he cut her off. "He gave it to you. You're giving it to us. Same difference." Julia just smirked from the couch, not even bothering to stand. "Don't be dramatic, Mom. We'll handle the bookings." "Bookings?" Kyle gestured grandly toward the water view. "Prime waterfront, peak season. I listed it this morning. Easy money. You two can have the downstairs during off-season." I looked at my father's hands. They were trembling, just like they do when he's furious and trying desperately not to show it. This was the same man who once worked 3 jobs and still showed up at my high school orchestra concert in a greasy uniform. And now, he was being told to move aside in a house he'd just learned was his. I was raised on be useful, not be loud. But that last text from Dad, that was a request I couldn't file under later. I set the cake on the counter. It looked ridiculously out of place, crowded among fast food bags and makeup kits. My voice, when it came out, was steady. "Who told you this is your house?" Kyle rolled his eyes as if I were the slow one. "Family money, family house. Don't be weird." Julia added, in a sing-song voice, "We're not asking, Tommy. We're updating." Mom's face crumpled. "Thomas, can you just explain?" Kyle pointed at my father again. "He can explain." From the porch. Julia giggled. "Babe, stop. Dad knows we love him." My father's jaw worked, but no sound came out. Something in me clicked into place, precise as a bayonet. "Everyone to the living room," I said. Not loud, but surgical loud. The kids paused their cartoon. The dog stopped shredding a throw pillow. Kyle snorted, but he followed, because people like him always believe the room belongs to them. I stood by the mantel, under a framed photo of my parents cutting a supermarket cake 40 years ago. I could feel my pulse throbbing in my thumbs. I pulled a folder from my bag and laid out 5 documents on the coffee table. "Deed," I said, tapping the first page. "Recorded last week. The property is owned by the S&R Life Trust. Lifetime beneficiaries, Sam and Ruth, my parents. With exclusive right of occupancy." Kyle squinted, like the words themselves were physically assaulting him. "In English," I said, "you don't get a key, Kyle." He scoffed. "Bro, try and stop me." I tapped the second page. "Trust instrument. Successor trustee. It gives me the duty to maintain the property for my parents' comfort. It also gives me the obligation to remove anyone who interferes with that." Julia's voice slid, sugary and fake. "Thomas, you can't be serious. We're helping." I slid the third document forward. A color screenshot. "The Airbnb listing you just posted, using photos you took without permission." The description. "Entire home. The house rules. No owner on site." The availability calendar. "Booked out every weekend through August." The payout. "Bank account ends in digits that match yours, Kyle." I blurred them for the kids. Kyle shifted his weight. "So what? Your parents could use the cash, man." I put down the fourth document. A printed group chat thread from last night that Julia didn't know Dad had forwarded to me. Her messages were in gray. "We'll get him on board. He always caves if Mom cries. I'll guilt him about med school loans. So excited to finally have a beach base." Julia reached for it. I covered it with my hand. I placed the 5th document, a laminated copy of the HOA rules. I ran my finger down to the clause. "No short-term rentals." Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to pack your things today. You're going to delete the listing. You're going to text every person who booked and tell them the home is unavailable and issue refunds. You're going to apologize to mom and dad for frightening them in their own kitchen. And you're going to leave this house key on the table. Julia blinked, as if she'd misheard me. Then she laughed, a trilling, high-pitched sound. Or what, Tommy? Or, I said, my voice cutting through her mirth. I will perform my duty as trustee. Kyle took a step toward me. Duty this, he sneered, puffing his chest out like we were still 12-year-old boys squaring off in a schoolyard. Mom whispered, Kyle, please. I don't like yelling. I like precision. So, I kept it surgical. I set my phone on the table, screen up. On it, a drafted email to the HOA board, with attachments. A second email to their county council. A third to the county recorder, with the Airbnb link and a request to flag the parcel for illegal use. And a text thread open with a locksmith named Victor, who was parked 2 houses down because I'd called him from the highway when Dad sent that first some confusion text. Kyle saw it and shuffled his weight. You wouldn't. I would, I said. And I already did. Julia reached for Mom. Mom, tell him. Tell him this is family. Mom didn't look at her. She looked at me. Thomas, she said, her voice trembling, but firm. Do what you need to do. Kyle's face changed. He pointed to the door again. The same stupid gesture that had lit the fuse. Old man out. I stepped between Kyle and my father. My hands were steady, unwavering, because I've held brains that pulsed like trapped birds. Point at my father again, I said, very quietly. And the only door you're going through is the one Victor is about to lock from the outside. Silence. Not even the cartoons dared to make a sound. Julia tried one last angle. You're cruel, she accused, tears welling up in her eyes. You're abandoning your family. I exhaled slowly. I am done being your wallet. That's not abandonment. That's a boundary. Kyle muttered something under his breath. We'll see about that. He lunged for the folder. Maybe to grab the deed. Maybe to rip up paper like that could kill a trust. I simply picked up the documents, tucked them safely away, and turned to Dad. Dad, I said, would you like to stay in your living room? He swallowed hard. Yes. Then everyone who doesn't live here, go pack. No one moved. The doorbell rang. Victor. Right on time. It took 3 hours. Chaos always takes longer to unwind than to start. Victor changed the deadbolt while Kyle performed a quiet little tantrum in the driveway. Whisper yelling at Julia, kicking at the curb, making frantic calls to check a legal thing. The dog barked itself hoarse. The kids moved like embarrassed shadows, stuffing clothes into tote bags, half watching me as if I might explode. I didn't. I sat with Mom at the kitchen table and made tea in the kettle I'd bought. She kept dabbing her eyes with a napkin. I didn't want to tell you, she whispered. I thought we could smooth it. They came in so fast. They said it would be easier for us this way. No stairs for your father, less to clean. They said they'd take over the hard parts. The hard parts are the parts that mean it's ours, I said gently. She nodded, a small, guilty nod I knew from every time she'd apologized for the weather. Dad stared out at the water. I thought I'd be stronger, he said, his voice raw. I should have told them to leave. You called me, I said. That was the strong part. In the living room, I opened my laptop, connected to my hotspot, and forwarded canceled every single illegal booking. I wrote each customer. Listing removed by owner. Refund issued. I attached the HOA rule for the one who threatened a bad review. I drafted a short, polite letter to the neighbors. You may have seen cars. There was confusion. There will be no short-term rentals at 20 Forks Bray. Julia tried to reframe it at least 3 times. First pass, sitting on a packed suitcase, face arranged into soft hurt. We were just excited for them. I wanted the kids to be around their grandparents more. You know how you work. Second pass. It makes sense if you think about it. You're never there. They're getting old. We're the ones with energy. Third pass. When I didn't argue, didn't bite, she went for the jugular. You think money makes you the parent, Thomas? It doesn't. You buy things so you don't have to be a person. I bought a house for our parents, I said, my voice flat. I didn't buy a permission slip for you to steal. She flinched at the word, then her eyes went cold. You'll remember this, she spat. I hope so, I replied. Kyle refused to hand over the key. Come and take it, he smirked, which would have been cute if Victor hadn't installed the keypad lock 10 minutes earlier. I reached past Kyle, pressed 0-0-0-0, then reprogrammed it to a code Dad chose. Right there, while Kyle watched all his leverage sink into the sea air. He tried another angle. You think you're clever with your papers? He said. I know a guy. I know the county clerk, I said evenly. And your guy is about to tell you a trust beats a tantrum. He stared at me, trying to decide if I was bluffing. I wasn't. When they finally carried their last boxes to the SUV, Julia paused on the porch. You could have just talked to me, she said, her voice laced with accusation. I have been talking to you for 10 years, I told her. Her mouth tightened. You'll regret this when they need help and you're not around. I looked at Mom, pouring tea inside. I looked at Dad's hand, finally still and resting on the armrest. I am around, I said. For them. They drove away. The dog yapped at the window like it had an opinion about property law. After they left, the house changed temperature. It was the same air, but not the same air. I could hear the ocean through the screen. I could hear my parents breathing. I went room to room with a trash bag, picking up juice boxes, a plastic tiara, 2 socks that didn't match. In the guest room drawer, I found a folded printout, Kyle's business plan. He'd estimated monthly profit at 5 times the HOA fine. In the margin, Julia had scrawled, "Tom won't say no if Mom cries." I put the paper down like it was something sharp. Mom kept apologizing for the mess. I kept saying, "It's just crumbs." When the sun slid down, Dad took my arm. "Son," he said, his voice thick. "I don't know how to say this without sounding like I failed you both." "You didn't fail us," I said, looking out at the shimmering water. "You gave us everything you had. You just gave too much to her, for too long." "We all did." He nodded, and didn't argue, because it was true, and the truth was a relief. I made a simple dinner. We ate on the deck. Mom told a story about her first apartment, the one with the mouse she named Bernard because he only came out on Sundays. Dad laughed. A deep, unburdened laugh I only hear when he's not being careful for everyone else. My phone buzzed like a nest of hornets. Text from Julia. "You made Mom cry." From Kyle. "Cease and desist, Dr. Boy." From an unknown number that turned out to be Kyle's cousin. "We're coming down next weekend, right?" We already invited people. I put the phone face down and ate my salad. That night, I set the alarm system. Installed a camera on the porch with a ridiculous, smiling chime, so even my parents would like it. I put the codes in a folder labeled Happy Things, with big letters my father could read without his glasses. I left copies of the trust, the deed, and the HOA rules in a drawer called Boring Armor. On my way out, Mom stood in the doorway, her sweater pulled tight. "I'm sorry it came to this," she said. "I'm not," I replied. "It needed to." The next week, everything wobbled like a table with one leg too short. Julia ran a loud campaign in the family chat. Thomas stole a house from the grandchildren. Screenshots poured in from cousins I barely speak to. Julia's Instagram stories, blank background, white text, "When money makes you cruel." Then a photo of my car in the driveway. "Some people think they can buy love." I didn't reply. I built a small wall. I called our aunt, who still says what she means. I explained in simple lines that the house belongs to my parents and will remain that way as long as they live. I asked her not to carry our pain like gossip. "Finally, Thomas," she said. And that was that. I wrote Julia and Kyle one email. Polite, firm, boring. 3 bullet points. All contact regarding the house goes through me. You do not have permission to enter the property. Any violation will result in action from the HOA and our attorney. I BCC'd myself. I BCC'd nobody else. I set the email as an auto-response to any of their future messages about the house. I promised myself I would not negotiate with a story that always ends the same way. 2 days later, a notification pinged. New booking request. Sea Spray Cottage. Kyle had relisted under a different account, with a photo of the back deck. I forwarded it to the platform's trust and safety, with the deed and trust attached. 10 minutes later, listing removed. User banned. I didn't feel triumph. I felt like a janitor at a stadium after a game, just doing the work. Dad called me one morning to say the house smelled like toast and salt, and that he'd slept through the night for the first time in months. Mom sent a photo of her feet on the deck rail, ankles crossed, nail polish bright pink, just like when I was 5 and thought she was movie star beautiful. They looked light. In the background of all that softness, Julia kept scratching at the wall. She sent me a payment request in an app for emotional damages. She mailed my parents a letter that began, "As your primary caregiver," a sentence that had never been true. Kyle posted a meme with a syringe and a dollar sign, implying I stole organs for money. Their noise didn't change the air in the little blue house. One night, Julia called from a blocked number. I answered, because maybe I'm soft, maybe I'm hopeful. She went quiet when she heard my voice. Then she tried a new tactic, a whisper. "Tommy, listen. We're behind." Kyle lost his contract. "We're going to lose the apartment. The kids." I closed my eyes. There is a point where empathy becomes gasoline. "Julia," I said, my voice measured. "I will not discuss the house." "So money matters more to you than family?" She snapped, the mask back on. "Boundaries," I said, "are how I can be family and not a bank." She hung up. I let the silence sit like a patient in recovery, monitored, protected, painful in a healing way. 2 weekends later, I drove down early. Coffee in a thermos, stethoscope still around my neck from habit. The water had that flat silver look, like it was resting between breaths. I fixed a sticky door hinge. I put tennis balls on the garage shelf at the right depth so Dad could pull the car in without bumping the wall. I labeled the breakers because Dad loves labels. Mom made pancakes, burned the first batch, and then laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. We sat at the table and spoke about groceries, about the neighbor named Jan who leaves shells in a jar on the fence, about the pelican who refuses to be dignified. No one said Julia for an hour. It felt like a clean countertop. After breakfast, Mom touched my hand. "I'm going to talk to your sister," she said. "Not to argue. To say no. I'm not asking you to choose," I said, and I meant it. "I'm not interested in that scorched earth thing where people declare winners. I just wanted my parents to have a porch in peace." Mom smiled, a small, knowing smile. It's not choosing, she said. It's stopping the pretending. Dad cleared his throat. I should have taught that better, he said. I taught you to work. I didn't teach you to stop. You taught me to love and to stay, I said. I'm just learning the without being eaten part. He laughed, low and grateful. I walked the perimeter and tightened the gate latch. Checked the camera angle. I printed a small sign for the entry table. Welcome home, Sam and Ruth. It felt corny and exactly right. Later, alone on the deck, I thought about the headline my sister would write if she owned my story. I gifted my parents a house and ruined my family. That's not what happened. What happened is I stopped paying the troll under the bridge. What happened is I made a gift and then guarded it so it didn't become a weapon. I used to tell myself that handing out money kept the peace. It didn't. It just kept the noise quiet while resentment fermented in the walls. Boundaries are louder at first. Then, there's a hush no one can fake. The messages slowed. Julia pivoted to other audiences. Kyle found a new hill to throw a tantrum on. My parents started saying small no's that sounded like yes to their own lives. No, we can't watch the kids this weekend. No, we can't drive across town to fix your car. They started saying yes to early sandwiches, to naps, to pointing out boats with funny names. A month in, my niece, 16, all band tees and big eyes, sent me a DM that just said, "The house is pretty. Grandma looks happy there." I typed back, "Come visit with Grandma's permission. No bookings, just pancakes." She sent a laughing emoji, and then, okay, a tiny truce with someone who didn't break anything. Last night, after a late case, I drove to the house because I needed to see it lit from the inside. Through the window, I could see my father reading in his chair, glasses slid down his nose, the same way he sat in our old apartment when the only light we had was the TV glow. Mom had a blanket over her lap and a puzzle on the table. The sound of the ocean climbed in and settled under everything like a bass line. I didn't go in. I stood on the sidewalk and let the quiet explain the point of all of this to me. Here's what I know now. Love is not covering someone's bad behavior with your own body. It isn't congratulating chaos because the person causing it shares your blood. Love is a house with good light and doors that lock. Love is paperwork that holds when people don't. Love is telling your parents, rest, and telling everyone else, no, I am not their bank. I am not their scapegoat. I am not the emergency exit they pull when the fire they set gets hot. I am their son, a man with a job that asks me to be precise. A brother who finally learned that precision belongs at home, too. If my sister ever wants to stand on this deck and look at this water with our parents, she can. She can come with empty hands and an apology, not a business plan. She can be family without touching the thermostat. Until then, the house stands. The locks click. The gulls argue. The windows sing when the wind pushes in from the bay. Inside, my parents breathe easy. That's the moral, if there is one. A gift should not cost you yourself. And a boundary is not cruelty. It's the way love keeps its porch light on without burning down the neighborhood. So what do you think? Have you ever had to draw a line with family that felt impossible, but absolutely necessary? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories.